Hey people, it's Wall here with Wallcraft, and today we're bringing you a video showcasing some of the new demonic sacrifice forms. Now this is the new update to the last talent in demonology. It's demonic sacrifice. The effect now transforms you into a demon form depending on which demon is sacrificed, and each form has 4 unique abilities which it can use well in this form. You're only allowed to use demonology spells in addition to these 4 well inside these forms, and currently you're not able to enter water with them because I'm still working on the animation kits for the forms. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. First form we're going to show is the Imp form. When we consume the Imp, we transform into a Balrog, and we gain the 4 Imp abilities, which we can use in conjunction with our demonology spells. First ability for the Imp is obviously the phase shift. All of these abilities are modified for player usage, essentially. So you'll see the first ability is the phase shift. It's castable in combat, and for 10 seconds you become unattackable. You leave this intangible state if you cast any spells or use any abilities. You actually can't cast spells on yourself during this time. This helps the player evade damage from other players or enemies in PvE situations while they're DPSing in this form. This is the caster form, so obviously you're going to be dealing a lot of range damage, but you're also very squishy. It's the lowest armor for all the forms. Well inside this form, you're immune to polymorph. Your armor is increased by 100%. Your chance to crit and hit with spells is also increased by 5% respectively. Second ability that you unlock, of course, is the Firebolt. This is the standard Imp damage spell. You can see it's got a nice triple visual for the one that's cast by the Imp form. And of course when I crit with my fire spells, my Master Summoner procs an Imp. It spawns and deals damage. For the third ability, you have a Fire Shield. This Fire Shield is very unique in the fact that it damages nearby enemies every 3 seconds. It's got a 5-second cooldown and lasts 15 seconds, so I can actually cast it on allies. You want to try and have this maintained 100% of the time. You want it on 3 people. Juggle it between yourself and some party members to deal the maximum amount of AoE damage possible with it. This scales very well with spell power, if you'll notice. It scales with a pretty large portion of your spell power, a quarter, I believe. So yeah, it's very nice damaging ability for you. And then of course the last one is Blood Pact. This is a higher stamina amount than the traditional Blood Pact. With the talents, with the improved Imp talents, these do affect your... all the demon improvement in talents, they affect your forms for the specific ones. Fel Hunter and Fel Stamina obviously only apply to your demons, same with Master Demonologist and Soul Link, so we don't even take them if we're using the Fel forms. But yeah, the Imp form, of course, will increase your Blood Pact, so you can actually achieve up to 63 stamina buff with this. It's very, very powerful in the end game, especially for raiding. On to the next form, though. This is the 4 abilities for the Imp. We're going to go and summon our Void Walker. Sacrifice the Void Walker, and you'll notice that we have the Void Walker's abilities now. Starting off, we're going to look at the sacrifice. Obviously, you can't really make a self-sacrifice be feasible. So the Void Walker form has sacrificial charge, which allows the Warlock to charge an enemy, dealing a pretty significant amount of damage to nearby enemies and knocking them back. You see, if these were players, they would have been knocked back, and it deals pretty significant damage. I'm in full Abyss, so you'll see the numbers reflect that. The 4 forms each have a specific role and purpose. The Imp is the range DPS, Void Walker is a tank form. So you'll see, well, in this form we have 800% armor. That gives us 8.1k armor in full tier 3 caster gear. Our chance to be critically struck by melee attacks is reduced by 10%. So in PvE scenarios, you're actually crit immune while in this form. Obviously, you'll still take crushing blows from bosses, so I wouldn't really recommend tanking raid bosses with this form, but it's very effective at tanking, really tanking any trash in raids. Very effective. Total health is increased by 30%, so you can see my health is on par with a warrior tank in equivalent gear. So we have the charge ability that deals pretty significant damage, really good for pulling, just charge right on in and deal nice damage and threat. The second ability is Torment. This taunts the creature, forcing it to attack the Warlock. It also deals a pretty significant amount of threat when you use it. Now with the talents, it's got a 5-second duration and a 5-second cooldown. So you can see talent reduction and the duration increase. So when we go to Torment the enemy, you'll see that it actually has basically 100% uptime on the debuff, meaning as a Warlock tank, you can essentially hold the aggro of a single target extremely consistently. You can make sure that this target is staying on you. Threat isn't going to be an issue for that target because it's basically permanently stuck on you with Torment. In terms of AoE aggro, you have your third ability, Consume Souls, 6-second cooldown. This deals damage equal to your spell damage to nearby enemies. So you can see the amount of damage that's being dealt. If you take a look, 609. That's because I have 609 spell damage on all of my gear. This makes sure that the ability scales with your gear and that you're favoring spell damage gear instead of using, you know, a heavy armor cloth gear or heavy stamina cloth gear. It ensures that you want a nice mix of the gear for threat and DPS as well as tanking. While doing any Void Walker tanking here. The last ability, of course, is Suffering, 2-minute cooldown. It's an AoE taunt. With the talents, it's a 10-second duration, and it taunts all enemies within 10 yards for 10 seconds, while decreasing all damage taken by the Warlock. I actually have to fix that tooltip as well, I just noticed. Decreases all the damage taken by the Warlock by 50% for the duration, and with the Void Walker talents, obviously it lasts 10 seconds, so this is our AoE taunt / shield wall. You charge right onto an enemy, and then pop this, and you'll see all the enemies just gather onto you for 10 seconds while you have a 50% damage reduction effect. Yeah, very nice toolkit. It's very effective. Play tested it pretty well. I wouldn't say it outperforms any other tank class. It's probably the weakest tanks, but it's a very good substitute tank in case you need, you know, somebody to pick something up. You just Fel Domination, go into the Void Walker form, and then you can charge and taunt enemies very, very consistently, very reliably. The next form moving on is the Succubus form. When we sacrifice the Succubus form, we gain the 4 Succubus abilities. We have Immune to Polymorph, 400% armor, 10% melee hit chance, and melee haste increased by 50%. This ensures that we don't need actually any hit gear to function, because we would be using the Firestone with a one-hander. That would put us at over hit cap for raids, so don't need any hit gear for you know, melee Warlock. The Succubus form is the melee DPS form. It's got a nice array of unique abilities that are, of course, flavored to the Succubus. The first ability we're going to look at is Seduction. This will actually turn on GM and then summon a bunch of Hoggers to showcase. I'm just going to summon a few Hoggers there. And we're going to look at the abilities first before we showcase it, but we have Seduction. This is an AoE version of Seduction. Only works against humanoids, of course, and must be channeled to maintain for up to 15 seconds. It CCs all the enemies nearby. And then this works very nice in conjunction with the greater invisibility that a Warlock has. Turn on the greater invisibility. And we can move in right up to the enemies. They can't see us. We start channeling Seduction. Invisibility fades after the Seduction goes off. But you can see they're all seduced right now. And then, because of course this has no diminishing returns in PvE. In PvP, of course, it does, but in PvE it doesn't. So that allows us to recast it, and any enemies that are vulnerable to being feared or seduced essentially can be very, very well controlled well in this form. So this form has a very high amount of control that you'll see. We're just going to go ahead and use our second ability. Second ability is Lash of Pain. This causes instant, it's an instant attack ability. So basically like a Crusader Strike type ability for Warlocks. It deals pretty heavy shadow damage. It's got a very nice coefficient for scaling. So if you take a look here at a level 60 enemy, we hit 860 damage on that. It's a pretty nice coefficient for scaling. With the talents, it's only got a 3-second cooldown, so this is pretty significant for DPS. Of course, our third ability, Soothing Kiss. This has a double attack effect for the Warlock Succubus form. Your next attack soothes the target. It deals 2 hits while reducing your threat. So you can see it's an on next hit effect for the Succubus form. And when we strike the enemy, we'll deal 2 instances of damage. This works very nicely in conjunction with the Firestone, along with the improved Firestone talent, which gives us 20% crit chance from the Firestone. You combine this with Master Summoner, and you'll see all of the amount of imps that we're spawning just by DPSing. Because the Firestone proc crits and then summons the imp with our Master Summoner talent, which is guaranteed to summon a lesser imp whenever we crit with the fire spell. So you can see we get this nice little army of lesser imps built up. They last for 20 seconds, and they deal relatively low damage, but it builds up pretty quickly. So you can have like 10 imps up, and they pummel for a pretty nice amount of damage there. And then, of course, you know, if you've got Curse of Elements up or anything like that, you definitely could be better off on that. Next form, it's all the Succubus talents, and we're going to be looking at the last form here. Last form is the Fel Hunter form. This is the Warlock's healer form. You have some nice abilities to harm and heal enemies. In this form, you'll see the armor is increased by 200%. We regenerate 5% of our mana every 5 seconds, and our resistances are increased by 100%. This form is very nice in the fact that it combines with the Blood Tithe talent for your abilities, and of course the other Fel Hunter talent. First spell we're going to look at is Spell Lock. This form has a 7-second cooldown with talents and prevents... It causes an interrupt to any casting for up to 8 seconds, and a 3-second silence. So this is very strong, and the fact that you, in this form, can lock somebody out of a school of magic, basically on a permanent basis, provided they're trying to hard cast anything, if you get the interrupt off. The second ability, Devour Magic. This purges 1 harmful effect from the friend, or 1 beneficial magic effect from an enemy, so a purge or a dispel. If an effect is devoured, the Warlock will be healed for 10% of their total life. So every time I purge a spell off an enemy or an ally, I gain 10% of my total life. That's 927 life, very significant amount. The third ability, Fel Blood. This is very much like your health funnel. You funnel demonic blood into the target, healing the target ally for 300 health per second with talent, at the cost of your own health, and it deals damage to enemy targets while healing yourself. So it functions kind of like a combined health funnel and a drain blood. You'll see that this target is neutral, so it's basically counted as friendly. Take a look here. We'll turn it into an enemy. And you can see I'm damaging it for 452 damage and healing myself 452 every second. If this was... let's see... make it an ally of mine. There we go. And then we'll damage it for 5,000. 5,000. And you can see as I'm channeling, I'm funneling my health into it, much like a health funnel. And then versus an enemy, it will damage the enemy instead. You know, cast it against an enemy and drain the health back. It of course functions with the Blood Tithe talent as well, so when channeling to heal a friendly target, it will damage you while healing them, but with the Blood Tithe talent, it also restores 100% of the mana from the amount of health gained. So if you're healing them for 450 health per tick, you're going to heal them for 450 mana per tick. This gives it a very significantly unique role in the fact that you can restore mana to people in this form. More consistently than any other class, really. But you can also heal, damage, dispel, and counterspell. Now, imagine something like this while progressing through Molten Core, and you need dispellers. Oh, well, we don't have enough dispellers, you know, there's not enough priests in the raid. You have a Warlock pop on this form, and suddenly he's very, very capable dispeller. He can heal, he can restore mana, he's very good to just park him on the main tank and have him channeling the health, and then he damages the boss, or he restores his own health by dispelling the magic, or by damaging the boss, and then he can funnel it back into the tank. Of course, let's talk about the fourth ability, Paranoia. This is a 10-second cooldown, instant AoE heal. Heals all friendly targets within a radius of, I believe, 20 yards. Also greatly decreases the stealth detection of all the affected units for that time period. So you see, we pop Paranoia. It's a 10-second cooldown, AoE heal, instant cast. Doesn't have a cost associated to it either. And then it increases our stealth detection for the duration. It's a very nice spell for AoE healing. Gives Warlocks very good scaling for raids because the amount of health is equal to my spell damage. So you can see I'm healing for 608 health for everybody in the AoE. And that obviously scales 1-to-1 with spell power, so it's very good scaling for that spell. It'll start off weak. If you're level 40, you probably don't have more than 20 to 30 spell power at most. So the heal would be very low, but then as you progress, you're post-max, it's going to be healing in a raid environment for 800 to everybody around. Turns it into a very good spell. So I wanted each form to essentially have a scaling component to ensure that they weren't static, that they were very good at 40 and then slowly got worse. I wanted to make sure that they all scaled very well. So, yeah, that's the 4 new Metamorphosis forms for the Warlock. I know that this was promised a long time ago, and took a lot of work. Took a couple days of working on this. It's actually a very massive update. Thousands and thousands of lines of code. Is basically like adding the entire Druid class, basically. So, very, very proud with how it turned out. Still a lot of work to do with the animation kits. That's low priority. People just have to understand that, yes, some of the forms don't have a jumping kit right now. They will, before launch. So, just enjoy the gameplay for what it is, and stay tuned for future developments. Until next time, peace.